I am Sherry Naudine, owner of Collegiate Sports Advocate, and I have an amazing guest with us today, Kelly Oberle with AccessHumanPotential.com. And we have known each other, oh girl, since 2003.
Yeah.
I will let Kelly introduce herself and her background because she has a phenomenal background. And it is for parents because parents are part of the process. Go.
Thank you, Sherry. Yeah, we've known each other since we were really young, right? Yes, as Sherry said, my name is Kelly Oberle. I run a company called Access Human Potential. My background, I was a Division I athlete at Northwestern. I played softball. Then I went straight into corporate, and then I actually coached high school for a couple of years, ran a lot of softball camps and clinics and speed and agility and all of that. And then I started my company, which is Access Human Potential, to really focus on the mental part of the game. And what we do is we work with teams, athletes, and parents and coaches kind of to really try to help get the best out of an athlete. And so that's really the focus of our company. What we wanted to talk about today was really about the parent piece of an athlete's journey, not only for the athlete, but also for us as parents. So I am a parent, so I have kids that have played sports. I also have played sports, still play a little bit of sports, and then obviously I've coached. And one of the things we do with all of our teams and athletes is we do a pre-assessment, why this is relevant, and we ask our athletes how parents can support them in the mental game. And so a lot of what I'm going to talk about today is data and information that we've gotten not only from our athletes, but what's out there for the public to be able to see.
Fantastic. And I love that, Kelly. And that's why you and I connected on this topic, because I've always said it's a triangular effect to recruiting, because it is about the student athlete's talent. It's about the team they're on and the coaching they get along the way and the training they do, but it's also very much driven by the parents. And I don't think parents get enough feedback or are willing to take the feedback because they feel that they want to help maneuver and manipulate the system, which is usually the opposite of what they should be doing. So tell me what your learnings have been and how can these parents help their student athletes?
Yeah, I think, one of the things, and I totally agree, it is a triangle. And so the parents play a really important role, one, in obviously supporting our kids, and then two, also in making sure that our kids stay in the game. And so a couple of things that we've seen is that, one, kids want parents who are supporting them, but not interfering in the game. And I think that's a really important distinction, because as parents, it's challenging. You think about if you were allowed to be in like your kid's math class or your kid's science class, you may not always like what they're doing or like what they're seeing or like how the teacher's approaching things, but you're not in there, so you don't get to have an opinion on that. With sports, you get an opinion on it, right? Because it's all out there. And that's not always helpful for our student athletes. So that's one of the areas that we see is like, how can we be supportive as parents to our student athletes?
Well, and I like you're hitting on the how, because I talk about marketing, the who, what, where, when, how of everything we do. And I think that's the part that I want to get out of this conversation today, is to teach the parents how. And then one thing I learned on all three of my student athletes and the 1,250 we've been working with is each student athlete is different. And what they feel they need may not always be what they need too, because sometimes they choose the soft approach and yet the parent needs to prod them a little bit and encourage them. So give us a couple teasers of what techniques you use, because ultimately we do want them to call you and engage in the potential for you to come to their team or to work with them individually.
Yeah, I think the very first thing is self-awareness. And self-awareness, we really push it a lot with student athletes, but as parents, it's that self-awareness of what is our role in this journey and what do we want our kids to get out of athletics. A lot of times when we talk to parents, what they want to get out of it isn't necessarily how their behavior is. And I think, and I I think you probably see that a lot also, is I think people have really good intentions, but don't always know how to execute those intentions. And so the really the first area we really work on is self-awareness of what am I trying, like, what do I want my child to get out of sports? How can I best support them? And I think if we don't stop and pause and think about that, it's really easy to be more reactionary than responsive.
And I think one of the things I learned as a parent, and also what I ask my parents that I'm coaching through the process with their student athletes, is ask the student athlete, what is it that you need from me? I had one that you never needed to say one thing to. She was so self-driven and hard on herself that we had to kind of soften it for her and say, man, it's not, the sport doesn't define you as a human. So don't take it to that level. Where the other one, we had to kind of chew a little bit and chop and work a little harder because, you know, she had a harder time living up to her potential. She wanted to kind of raise the bar here and ride right here. What are your thoughts there?
I think you hit it right on. And it's in any kind of relationship, people, you know, need different things. I think with student athletes, what's really important is when you have those conversations also, because a lot of times we have those conversations when we're upset or when they've just done something or they're not performing to their capabilities. And a lot of times that's not the best time to have that conversation. And there's a difference between, you know, parenting and having boundaries and, you know, having discipline and having your kids follow through on their commitments versus trying to find out how we can keep them in a sport that we know they enjoy, but they're having a rough go at it.
Yeah. And as a previous coach, you and I both being coaches, I used to coach the parents to say, hey, and old school, right? Write it down on a note card. Now to open your notes app and write down some things that you want to address, but yelling your batting technique or run harder, run faster in a game isn't the best approach for the student athlete. And two, my kids said they tuned us out. They didn't even hear us. And so it was wasted energy. And I always say it made the parent look cray, you know. I can own that. But, you know, that conversation on the drive home is rough and, you know, give it a break. And then the control what you control and influence what you don't. When you go to your next lesson, say, hey, I noticed some things this weekend at your game that I would love to see you and your clinician work on.
Yeah, and I think that's the idea. Like a couple of the things that we really try to focus the parents on is kind of what's your role in their journey. Because there's the role as a parent, and then there's a role as kind of the parent of an athlete. And so what is that role? And sometimes they need you to be mom or dad, and sometimes they need you to be just like in school. I make a lot of I look at how we deal with our students should be kind of how we deal with our athletes in a lot of ways. What's going to get them to that next level? And so does your child need more of a supportive parent? Do they need more of a, you know, kind of an aggressive parent? Are we teaching our kids to self-advocate? So self-advocating doesn't mean we just throw them out there, but it does mean that we don't try to do everything for them. And so when I look at sports, I always ask parents, you know, are you trying to build resilience for your kids? Are you trying to build them to be good teammates? Are you trying to build them to be good athletes? So what are those things that you need to do to help them do that? And to be a good teammate isn't to just hop from team to team, right? When it goes tough, it may be that you need to get out of that situation eventually, but how do you do that where people look at you and say, hey, that's a good teammate?
Oh, and I use this line all the time in that situation. Wherever you go with you. So fix you first. And I love that because, you know, you're dealing with 14, 15, 16-year-olds that have been controlled and guided by their parents for a long time. What I've seen change over the years, and a lot of people will go with me on this one, is what I call permissive parenting. And they want to be their friend, and they want to be always that soft place, and they always want to help make excuses for not failure, but not doing as best you can. And yet, if you drive them, how much do you drive them before you break them? Yeah. And I think that's kind of the conversation piece where they need a professional like you that have seen at what point are you driving that kid into potentially like mental mindset challenges, right?
Yeah, and it's interesting because I think one of the things that I talk a lot with parents about is creating kind of that separation a little bit, the emotional separation, because sports, I think we talked about this before we got on, about like there's a mirroring effect with sports. And if you think about when you watch your favorite team, you get really emotionally involved, or if you see a really bad injury, like you can almost feel that injury. So then you add that to like the emotional attachment you have to your kids, and it's very hard to separate.
Yes.
You want to protect them. You want to, be on their side. You want to be their biggest promoter. And that sometimes can be the reason that they don't do well or they don't want to play anymore.
And worse, what we see with college coaches is they're viewing the parents. Do they want that parent on their sidelines? Do they want that parent calling the athletic director or lighting them up every Monday morning like they do their club coaches, going, why is my kid not playing? And why is this and why that? They have a lot of opinion from what I call, the armchair quarterback view. And they really, because of travel ball and the way they've been able to move around, really feel that that's a culture that they take to college. And I'm going to say once more, really loud and clear, parents, they are watching you. They are watching your social media. They are trying to see if you have the culture and the behavior that they're looking for from a recruiting perspective. They got choices.
Yeah. And, I think and I will say, I think this is one of the hardest things to do, is to parent athletes, and especially when you see when they're young and they poured a lot into it and you poured a lot into it, it can be very, very challenging. But to your point, sports is really about building resilience, responsibility, commitment. And if you take that away and kind of you don't allow your kids to self-advocate or to stick it out and see if they can become that starter. They can become, that person that didn't make the team the first time, but, now is a starter, and they see that success. They're not learning what we want them to learn out of sports.
Oh, and what I just heard you, oh my goodness, what I just heard you say is what I think is a golden nugget here, is the conversation that probably needs to be had between the parent and the student athlete is, what do you want out of the sport? What I know is they are not mature enough to understand those life skills long term. So if the parent is looking for the life skills, I will share my own child's interview with a law school that she ended up graduating from, magna cum laude, which is, they looked for those athletic lifestyles: persistence, perseverance, teamwork, culture, overcoming obstacles. All of those life lessons that are different for each athlete are so valuable for the next 40 years. But the kids don't understand that yet. And I say young adults because they're not kids, but their mind isn't there yet.
Yeah. And I think we both have worked in corporate. And so, you would always look at, I hired a lot of athletes, or I would look at athletes and, I'd want to know kind of what they learned out of their sport, because I felt like that perseverance, that ability to stick things out, to do things when you don't feel like you can take another step, is a strong skill that you can bring into a lot of parts of your life. So selfishly for me, I want to help kids and parents build those relationships so that when they're out in the real world, they have the skills to survive and to thrive, I guess is a better way to put it.
And a couple bullet points here that I know this can be a long podcast. I want to tease our audience to come chat with you. But some of the things I've seen you address very well in your program is pregame, what to do. And you are going to give them solid tips and solid assessments for an individual. That's the same thing we do in recruiting. We don't just give generic free recruiting advice across the United States, and Mexico and Canada, by the way, because it is all different for each student athlete. So you talked about a pregame plan, a postgame plan, and then the big one: how are the parents showing up for their student athlete? And is it the right approach for their student athlete? Do you want to give a little summary there and again,
Yes,
invite them to your website and what they can do next with you?
sure. And one thing I wanted to kind of, I know you had mentioned a little bit about like what the athlete wants out of their sport. We do something with both the parents and the athletes so that we can compare. And we'll do this with teams sometimes, but a lot it's with individuals where the individual athlete will say kind of what they want out of the sport, and the parent will say what they want. And a lot of times those meet up, but the actions of both sometimes do not support that. And so that's where you can really work together. And it helps parents feel a part of the process, but they can work together to look at, okay, what are the goals and what are the habits and systems I want to create so that I can help my student athlete, but I can also help me stay focused on what's most important. So I just wanted to kind of highlight that.
Yeah. And one thing I think I talked to you about is teaching the parents how to take feedback. I'm spending more of my time coaching the parents through the journey than the student athlete, because it is their behaviors, it is their engagement, their involvement, what they're doing on social media, how they're interacting, or my favorite word, how they're maneuvering and manipulating, thinking that they can help the student athlete in the process. But my goal with you is to teach them how to help the student athlete and not try to maneuver and manipulate a system that is so far out of their reach.
Yeah, and I think that's the key. And I talk a lot with athletes and with parents on the majority of your time is spent in practices and working with your team. Very little is in the execution. It just, isn't like, I just was working with a cheer team and they practice and then it's 2 minutes and 30 seconds on the mat. Or if you look at in softball, how many hours have you practiced versus have you played? And we put so much emphasis on the play piece. And so I think with parents, it's, you can't speed up the process. You can't circumvent the process, so what is the process you want to support so that you can look back in 2 years or 5 years and be able to say, I enjoyed this experience and I helped my child enjoy this experience and they grew from it.
And I also think travel ball coaches are typically parents. Some of them are non-parent coaches. And I think they need to understand, their role as a parent / leader / coach in the process. So I would encourage, travel ball coaches and everybody else to engage with you. So what or how do they contact you, and what can we do to get them in touch with you?
So, and I will say we do, that is a big issue, is being a parent coach. It is such a challenging issue. So I work with a lot of parent coaches. So you hit it right on the head.
Yeah, it is the hardest part of coaching, because you're going to get blamed whether you're a daddy or a mommy baller. Remember, me and Randy Joe got called mommy ballers. And woo! But that's the hardest place. But yet it's really difficult with the cost of travel ball today to pay for non-parent coaches. It's not a paid, full-time position.
Yeah. Well, and I think it can be an amazing experience. You can look back, like I coached my kid, not at the travel ball level, and it was some of the best experiences we had when they were younger. So, but the best way to get a hold of me is you can, I have social media. So Access Human Potential, or my name, Kelly Oberly, I think I'm on Instagram and TikTok a little bit. I'm getting more into TikTok.
You're doing great.
So, they sometimes they support me and sometimes they really give me harsh criticism back. So I'm working on my feedback too.
Hey, and you know what? Sometimes their opinion doesn't matter so much, right? We all know that. But I will tell you, you are also on our partner page, and you can look for your little symbol up there with the lock and the person in it, unlocking the access potential to, get in touch with you, because I think we're just teasing how much information you have. So much more to give these people. And I want to be able to keep pushing this out there and sharing your content and, finding a way to engage them, because what I've had happen over time is parents absolutely sabotaged the end result. And it's tough on the student athlete. And yet many of them, like you said, are well-intended. They want to do the right thing, but the how is where you come in. So,
yeah. And I will say, like, we've jumped around a lot because there's a lot of, not everyone has the same issue. And if you start to notice your student athlete struggling with confidence or performance anxiety, sometimes we do have an impact on that. So we also talk a lot of times when I get kids that are struggling, we also have to talk with the parents about how they're showing up pregame, postgame, in-game practices, because, you know, we don't always think we affect our kids, but we do.
yeah. And I know from, of course, my own 3 athletes, they all wanted to do their best to please the family and to meet our expectations and the coach expectation. And that's a great trait. But we also have to recognize where that's coming from and, you know, see what we can do to help them. So I love this. I just don't want to go too long because, again, you have so much content. I want them to reach out to you and
I appreciate it.
and have a conversation and see what you guys can do to help them and their whole team and, you know, to get the most out of playing, you know, sports now and potentially college sports. So
yeah, and it can be a great family experience, and that's what you want it to be.
And that's it, man, a family experience.